The path of the Bodhisattva is generally divided into 10 stages called bhumis, bhumis, B-H-U-M-I-S. These stages vary from text to text and commentator to commentator, but in each case the Bodhisattva strives to progress from one stage to the next until he obtains enlightenment. We will be studying these stages as outlined in the Dasha Bhumika Sutra. Let us take up the first bhumi, pramudita, joyful stage. The Bodhisattva enters this stage after the awakening of bodhicitta and upon taking the Bodhisattva vow. As you recall, bodhicitta means the thought of enlightenment. The thought of enlightenment. As the Bodhisattva begins the path of Buddhahood, he is overwhelmed with joy. It is the joy of unlimited possibilities. He recognizes the emptiness of the ego and feels the awakening of a great heart of compassion. The Ascended Master Lanello recently told us that joy is the very first principle of the ascension. At this stage, the Bodhisattva devotes himself to giving, or dana, which is the first paramita. Buddhists stress that giving should be done without hope of reward. Without hope of reward. I think of the Old Testament saying, "Cast thy bread upon the waters, and after many days it shall return to thee." There is such a sense of freedom, of simply giving, and knowing that the gift reaches the farthest edge of the cosmos and turns around and comes back and brings to your shore multiplied what you have sent out. Buddhists teach that giving is threefold. The giving of material goods, the giving of protection from fear and harm, the giving of the Dharma of the teaching. Another important aspect of giving is the transference of merit. The transference of merit. The Bodhisattva willingly gives all his acquired merit for the salvation of all beings. This means we take our great causal body and we say, "Here, Saint Germain, here, Gautama Buddha, take my causal body. I am giving you a blank check. Write whatever you need out of my whole causal body and go and save the light bearers of the planet." I've said this so many times to Ascended Masters in distress that I'm afraid to look to see if there's anything left of my causal body. In Quietly Comes the Buddha, Gautama Buddha describes the perfection of giving as the total giving of oneself, the continual emptying of the jar of water, that the jar might be filled again. I'm getting empty. I need to be filled again. The same idea is expressed in the Dana Sutra. The Dana Sutra records that Gautama once said, "If the living beings knew the fruit and final reward of charity and the distribution of gifts as I know them, they would not eat their food without giving to others and sharing with others, even if it were their last morsel and mouthful." Buddhists like to tell the story of Prince Vishvantara as a supreme example of one who practiced the perfection of giving. This is one of the hundreds of stories called the Jataka tales, or birth stories. The Jataka tales relate how Gautama in previous embodiments fulfilled the requirements of the Bodhisattva Path. So we have the story of Vishvantara. He was a prince, and from the moment of his birth, the generosity of this prince was noted by the gods. With his first breath, he miraculously spoke out and said, "Mother, what gift can I make?" When he was 8 years old, he said, "If someone should ask me for my heart, I would give it to him, or my eye, or my flesh." You can do that if you desire to will your organs to others. As he grew older, he gave abundant alms to all, and at last presented even the royal white elephant to the emissaries of a neighboring country. The white elephant was believed to be the source of the kingdom's prosperity and of the nourishing rains. The emissaries had asked for the elephant in hopes of relieving their country's drought. We should give them our white elephant. Vishvantara's giving away of the elephant sparked such an outcry against him that he was banished to Mount Vanka. He spent his last day in the kingdom, giving away all his possessions. His wife Madri and his 2 children accompanied him in exile. They rode in a chariot driven by 4 horses. Along the way, they met some priests who asked for the horses and chariot. Vishvantara willingly gave them away. The family then walked on foot till they reached their destination and lived in a hut of leaves. An old Brahmin came one day when Madri was away. He asked Vishvantara to give the 2 children to be his servants and attendants. This caused Vishvantara great agony, but he could not refuse. Then Shakra, the king of the gods, appeared disguised as a poor priest and begged Vishvantara to give him Madri. When Vishvantara consented, Shakra assumed his own form and blessed Vishvantara. The heavens shook, the oceans roared, and the gods acknowledged that Vishvantara had truly achieved perfect knowledge and perfect charity in finally giving away the only thing he had left, his beloved wife. His wife Madri and his children were returned to him. The king and the people recalled him from exile and gloriously reinstated him in his rank. According to Buddhist tradition, Vishvantara was reborn in his next life as Gautama Buddha. Here is the second bhumi. It's called Vimala, the immaculate stage. This stage is attained by purity of conduct. The Bodhisattva at this stage exhibits straightforwardness, tender-heartedness, activeness, self-control, calmness, beneficence, incorruptibility, nobleness, magnanimity, and freedom from desire. He devotes special attention to the perfection of morality, or Shila, the second paramita. He observes and exhorts others to follow the 10 moral precepts, which means abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, slanderous speech, insulting speech, frivolous speech, greedy desire, malice, false views. He resolves to be the friend, guide, protector, teacher, and savior of others. Sangharakshita says, to however great an extent the Bodhisattva practices the perfection of morality, he will never think of himself as virtuous. He will wear his righteousness as lightly as a flower. Concepts of what is moral and what is immoral differ according to religious and ethnic customs and times. The Ascended Masters teach that from the standpoint of the spiritual path, moral and immoral practices are defined as those that either enhance or detract from the goal of union with God. Whatever gets you closer to God by legitimate means is good. Whatever puts you further away from God is not good. Buddha taught that morality is the foundation for a single-pointed mind, and that the practice of morality is the perfect method for protecting the mind from the influence of delusions. Hence, he set forth a code of morality in his Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path gives 8 precepts for right living. These are right understanding or right views, right aspiration or right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, or right absorption of God. All these things are right when they harm no one and are done to the glory of God. Be harmless and do whatever you do to the glory of God, and you will have the full reward. One of the Jataka tales that illustrates the perfection of morality tells of a lifetime when Gautama was embodied as a king's chaplain. The chaplain demonstrated great morality and was highly respected. One day he thought to himself, "The king treats me with respect superior to that which he accords to other Brahmins. Is it because of my birth, of my family, of my place, of the talents I possess? Or is it rather by reason of the morality which I have acquired? I am going to put it to the test." So then he decided what he would do. He stole some coins to see how the people would react. When he was caught, the townspeople denounced him and bound him and took him before the king. In great sorrow, the king said to him, "How is it that thou hast committed so immoral an act?" The chaplain explained his motive and said, "Now I know that in this world, birth, family, race, position are esteemed lowest. Morality is esteemed highest. It is the first of the blessings. I shall accomplish it in its entirety. I can no longer remain at home. I am going to become a hermit." He then retired from the world in order to better practice morality and eventually became an arhat. According to a later Jataka tale, Gautama is reborn as a bodhisattva. His teacher decides to test the virtue of his students by inviting them to steal dresses and ornaments for his daughter. He tells them he intends to give her in marriage, but she must have the proper attire. The bodhisattva is the only one out of the class of 500 who refuses to steal. He learned his lesson in stealing from his past life. The teacher asks him why, whereupon the bodhisattva replies, "I find there is no such thing as secrecy in wrongdoing." The teacher says, "You alone are worthy of my daughter." He then gives her to him as his bride. The third bhumi, Prabhakari, illuminating stage. At this stage, the bodhisattva's mind radiates the light of the doctrine. You realize that the body burns with the fire of passion, hatred, and error. You therefore cultivate an aversion to things of the world. You long intensely for enlightenment, and you devote yourself night and day to the study of the scriptures and the teachings of the Buddha. You spend hours in meditation and cultivate the perfection of kshanti, or patience. Kshanti is also sometimes translated as forbearance or endurance. According to Buddhist teachings, There are 3 aspects of patience. See which ones you have. The patience of forgiveness, the patience of being able to accept suffering, the patience of being able to engage in virtuous practice. Buddhist scholar Geshe Kelsang Gyatso says that the perfection of patience concerns the way we react to the beings and objects that harm us. We must realize that there is no way for us to overcome all our external foes. If we defeat one enemy, another always arises to take his place. If we kill someone who has harmed us, his relatives and friends will attack us in revenge. How is it possible to be free from all enemies who are as infinite as the expanse of space? Only by defeating our own anger can we overcome those who would harm us. Rather than reacting in anger, a bodhisattva always forgives. He forgives others for every injury and abuse. Indian scholar Har Dayal described it this way: he forgives them everywhere, in secret and in public. This is the place where I wanted to talk to you about forgiveness. It is a very hard thing to forgive certain acts taken by people. It is a hard thing to forgive a child molester who has taken something of the soul of a child that will not be regained for life. It is a hard thing to forgive the murderer, the rapist, the one who sets fire to your house or destroys your business, etc., etc. So what is the anatomy of forgiveness that we can truly, in good conscience and with profound sincerity and no withholding, follow? First of all, what we have to do is to look at the anatomy of the individual. The individual is composed of many parts. The individual has a divine spark. It is the Atman. The individual has a soul that is the potential to become God, but is not yet permanent. The individual has a holy Christ self, an I am presence, 4 lower bodies, an electronic belt containing the records of all karma, the psychology of the unconscious and the subconscious. The individual contains momentums that are not of the light, greed and avarice, the murderous intent, all kinds of perversions. So who and what is it that commits the crime of all of these? Well, it is not God. It is not the Atman. It is not the Holy Christ self. It is the soul somehow that has gotten entangled by and overtaken by the dweller on the threshold. The absolutely evil part of the self is this not self that we have created in all of our lifetimes, beginning with the very first moment when we cast doubt upon God or upon his sons and daughters. So the not self is entirely our creation. It has become a giant. It is lodged in the subconscious. And it is called the dweller on the threshold because it lies just beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. So it is subtle and cunning and moves against us by identifying with our own mind, the human mind, our own thoughts, our human thoughts, making us to believe that these are the products of our own mind, our own free will, and our own thoughts, and our own ability to reason and to be logical. So caught between the dweller on the threshold, who has been the soul's taskmaster for eons, the soul's persecutor for eons, and the reasoning conscious mind, the soul is many times swayed to perform the actions of the combined momentum of both the dweller and that untransmuted mind, that carnal mind. We know the soul was created by God, but not made permanent and would not be permanent until she would choose the path of discipleship, of bodhisattvahood. So now you look at a person who has done great harm to you or a member of your family. And you say, this harm is so great, I cannot forgive. You cannot forgive, and you do not have to forgive the dweller on the threshold, or the carnal mind that is not the true Christ mind. You can call for the binding and the judgment of the dweller on the threshold and the specific momentum of the dweller on the threshold in that particular individual concerning the particular crime he committed against you or your family or your business. So that is an all-out affirmation for the binding and the judgment of that portion of the self that is evil, that is not of God, and is not to be forgiven. Now we turn our attention to the soul. The soul may be tainted, the soul may be impure, the soul may have all kinds of problems. But until the soul is no more, it is still the potential to one day realize God. Therefore, no matter how bad is the action, we call on the law of forgiveness for the soul. So you pray for this soul to be cut free by the angels, to be taught by God, to be taken into the octaves of light or the mystery schools of the brotherhood on the etheric plane, to be instructed, to be tutored. You give the violet flame and the call for forgiveness, and you pray for this soul to make a turnaround, to be converted by the Holy Spirit, and to come into the service of God. In this sense, then, you have the perfect balance of the sense that justice is done, and justice is done through you without you taking a single physical action. The call at your altar for the binding of the dweller on the threshold and the forgiveness. You may not communicate with a person. It might be a total stranger. You may never see him or her again. The point is that you do your inner work. And when your inner work is done, you know with absolute certainty that in God's own time and his own way, justice will be meted out, the soul will be assisted, and if opportunity is forthcoming, it will be given. This gives you a sense of having fulfilled the law and cut yourself free. You don't have to continue being angry at someone. You don't have to continue hating someone. You don't have to have this knot inside of you all the rest of your life. This terrible thing happened to me and justice was not done and this person got away with it and I want to get even with him sometime, somewhere. If you harbor those feelings inside of you, it is so dangerous I cannot even tell you. You are setting the sail and the direction of your life in this life and beyond this life. And you will wind up in the astral plane because your most important desire of your being will be to go and find that person who did you wrong and get even with him. Now, I find that this is a really wondrous way to be liberated oneself from one's own consciousness that is not right, and to liberate people and to place the burden of karma on them rather than on ourselves. We pray that they will balance their karma, but we don't want to make the karma of having the wrong attitude and taking the wrong actions, taking the law into our own hands, because the law is not just. We go to the spiritual law of God and we make total peace with the situation. We do our decrees on it. It's over with. It can't stick to us. It can't attach itself to us. It can't weigh us down. We have given more mercy and more justice and more assistance than necessary to balance the situation. Always come out of a situation knowing that you have done right, you have not made karma, and if you have balanced that karma by walking the last mile in service to balance that karma so that you are free. Until you have balanced 100% of your karma, you will have karma to endure. And if you are trying to figure out whether your situation is karma or the testing of your soul or a trap that you need to run away from as fast as you can get out of there, you better pray about it and make your calls and give yourself to God and seek counsel if you need it. Enduring one's karma is such a necessity on the path. I could tell you for hours stories of my enduring karma that would probably fascinate you and burden you. But I don't intend to do that. It's in the flame, and maybe one of these days, if it's of any interest, I'll write about it, but there's much more important things to write about these days. So the saints and bodhisattvas, that means you becoming saints, you becoming bodhisattvas. You learn to draw into the fiery vortex of your heart the energies of personal and planetary karma, which require transmutation. Jesus told his disciples, "In your patience possess ye your souls." The fourth bhumi, Arkismati, radiant or blazing stage. In this stage, you, the bodhisattva, burn up sin and ignorance and enter into the light of the doctrine. You radiate energy in the sun, just as the sun radiates heat and light. This is not a future happening. You're doing it right now. You're burning up sin and ignorance in the violet flame. You're entering into the light of your mighty I Am presence, which is the doctrine. And you are radiating energy, just as the sun is radiating heat and light. Maitreya told his disciple Asanga that in this stage the bodhisattva is possessed of the blazing fire of knowledge by which all the defiling elements that resemble fuel are consumed. Although the bodhisattva has attained great spiritual heights, in the first three bhumis, it is at this stage that his attachment to self comes to a complete end. He perfects the 37 requisites of enlightenment and practices the perfection of virya, or vigor, energy. Hardial wrote, "Enlightenment depends entirely on virya. It is far better to live only for a day with full virya than to vegetate without energy during 100 years. Virya is the energy and zeal necessary to overcome one's faults, develop virtue, study the teachings, and serve others." Yes, it does take physical strength. When you don't have physical strength, your mind is not strong, your will is not strong. That's why I'm on the macrobiotic diet, because I have restored to this body the strength that I need for another round and another in this life. And I recommend you to study that path and see how this virya will come to you. Virya unites one to that which is excellent and is generally defined as energy in pursuit of the good. Serapis Bey spoke of virya on the 1st of January 1990. He said, "The determined ones have overcome. They have overcome enormous adversities, infirmities, weaknesses of the body. They have accomplished far more than those who have had perfect health and all things in life that they wanted." If you could have seen the saints, beloved, and what they bore in their bodies and by the will of the Spirit what they achieved, you would understand that there is nothing in this octave that can stop a warrior who has this true spirit, and this truly is a definition of virya. On December 31, 1990, Gautama Buddha said, "You have not cherished the moments enough to endow them with a depth of a fixed and pointed meditation upon the Buddha's heart of fire." The meditation on the fire of the heart, this, beloved, can result in a most physical, fiery sensation that can increase, that can endow words and thoughts and actions and the desires of God with a fierceness, a warmth, a white, hot heat, such as that which endows worlds and brings forth the creation of Elohim. The fire of your heart is the key to your ascension. How do you develop fire? You develop it by cultivating deep feelings of God and of God in manifestation, a gratitude that is profound love, a love that is a profound joy, wherein you merely think of the beloved El Moria and tears come to your eyes for what this Master has done for you. And the fire of love so increases and increases and increases because there is that divine interchange from his diamond heart to yours. By deep implorings and adorations and love, love that is always sacrificial love, love that has to work and lay down a part of itself in order to give itself. That is sacrificial love, where you really spend yourself in order to give and give to the Master. It will lay down a portion of the self that another might see, that another might know, that another might be more of the living fire of God. Fifth bhumi, Sudurjaya, very difficult to conquer stage. This stage is called difficult to conquer because the Bodhisattva is said to be unable to be conquered by the forces of evil. He develops purity and equanimity and truly comprehends the Four Noble Truths. To refresh your memory, the Four Noble Truths taught by Gautama are: life is suffering, dukkha. The cause of suffering is desire. There is freedom or cessation from suffering through the attainment of nirvana. The way to this liberation is through the Eightfold Path. Every time you desire something and you can't have it, you suffer. That's the great conclusion of Gautama Buddha, that life is suffering, and the root of that suffering is that we all have desires.
The mystical truths in religions East and West are brought to light again and made relevant for our time by Elizabeth Clare Prophet, world-renowned author and spiritual teacher. The Summit Lighthouse has been a beacon of spiritual truth to thousands worldwide since 1958. For more information, call 1-800-245-5445 or visit our website at www.summitlighthouse.org.
At this stage, the Bodhisattva pities the people of the world who are the slaves of pride and desire, and devotes himself further to their liberation. Out of compassion, he acquires a knowledge of the arts and sciences. He gets himself educated in a field that he can accelerate in, so that he can give through knowledge, through teaching, through being on top of what's going on in the world today. Some scholars apply the title difficult to conquer to the stage itself, for as long as the Bodhisattva still despairs at the state of the world, he remains on the fifth stage. One Buddhist monk has summed it up. On this level, there are two difficulties. One, striving to bring sentient beings to spiritual maturity, while two, not becoming emotionally unstable when they make a mess of everything that's done for them. In this stage, the Bodhisattva concentrates on the perfection of dhyana, meditation or concentration. Dhyana. All schools of Buddhism agree that for the safe and fruitful practice of meditation, a period of retirement from the world is necessary. This period can be long or short, depending on one's progress. Buddhists teach that wisdom arises from a single pointed mind. They use the analogy of a candle. When a candle is placed where there is no draught, it illumines the entire room. Likewise, when one's mind is clear and still, free from distraction, one can develop clear insight. A Tibetan text states, "He who does not practice meditation, though he possess all other qualities, falls into the power of restlessness, and his mind is wounded by the fangs of conflicting emotions." The power of meditation is dramatically illustrated in a story told by a Chinese pilgrim who visited India in the 7th century. While sailing on the Ganges, his boat was attacked by pirates who decided to kill him as a sacrificial offering to the gods. The pilgrim asked to be given a few moments to prepare to enter nirvana. I will read you what happened next as recounted by René Grousset in his book, In the Footsteps of the Buddha. Quote, "The pilgrim meditated lovingly upon the Bodhisattva Maitreya and turned all his thoughts to the heaven of the Blessed Ones, praying ardently that he might be reborn there in order to offer his respects and pay homage to the Bodhisattva. He prayed that he might hear the most excellent law expounded and reach perfect enlightenment, Buddhahood, that he might then redescend and be born again on earth to teach and convert these men and bring them to perform the acts of higher virtue, to abandon their infamous beliefs, and finally that he might spread far and wide all the benefits of the law and bring peace and happiness to all creatures." He then sat down in a posture of contemplation and eagerly bent his thoughts upon the Bodhisattva Maitreya. All of a sudden, he felt himself raised up to Mount Sumeru, And after having passed through 1, 2, and then 3 heavens, he saw the true Maitreya seated upon a glittering throne surrounded by a multitude of gods. Suddenly a furious wind sprang up all around them, beating up the waves of the river and swamping all the boats. The pirates then repented and threw themselves at the pilgrim's feet, beseeching him to save them. The Ascended Lady Master Clara Louise has told us that when our heart and mind are so stayed upon God, it creates a strong cord of living flame. She said, once you experience it and know how much can flow over this cord and through your crystal cord and reach many, once you know its power, yea, its omnipotence, you will not be able to turn to the right or the left, for the flame on the altar of your heart and your meditation room will be such a pull, such a blessing, and surely the means to save money, and surely the means to save many. I told you I'm getting empty. Not the least of whom your own soul. At this point, you may be wondering how long it takes, I'm wondering too, to progress through all these stages. Har Diyal wrote, a bodhisattva who has taken the vow has an incredibly long pilgrimage before him. He will reach his goal and become a Buddha after the lapse of a very long period of time, in comparison with which even geological and astronomical figures pale into insignificance. Are you prepared? The Mahayana Sutras tell us that the Bodhisattva career takes 3 countless kalpas. In Buddhist cosmogony, a kalpa is 1/4 of the duration of time from the origination to the destruction of a world system. According to the calculations of Har Diyal, a bodhisattva's career thus covers about 4 times 960,000 million, billions of years. Depending on how you define kalpa, he says it may take only 960 million years. Don't despair yet. The Tantric scriptures record Buddha as saying, Buddhahood can be achieved in 16 lifetimes or less. And at least one Mahayana sect believes it is possible to attain Buddhahood in 1 lifetime. Who's for that? It is said that the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin leapt immediately from the 1st to the 8th stage. Saint Germain promised us that we can ascend in 1 lifetime, this lifetime, if we decree diligently and balance our karma energetically and pass our tests. In very rare cases, it is necessary for a person to be born again in an additional lifetime. Such is the case in crimes of murder and severe karmic entanglements. So, knowing that with Saint Germain you can make it in this life, I counsel you to give it all you've got and prove the Master and make him prove what his promise is. As you study the steps and stages of the Bodhisattva Path in various Buddhist texts, you see that many of the descriptions of each stage seem to overlap and that the requirements are repeated. As I mentioned earlier, even scholars find it difficult to distinguish between them. The Ascended Masters teach that each new level of initiation compels us to complete each step all over again. It's like going around and around on the spirals of the cosmic clock through the months of the years, through the cycles of our birth chart. We reinforce cycle by cycle the victories we have already won, because the fallen angels attempt to steal from us our victories, and they will never agree or affirm that we have had them. We have to repeat our initiations again and again. We gain new ones, more difficult ones, but often they are on the same principle. The sixth bhumi, abhimukhi, face to face or turned towards stage. In this stage, the Bodhisattva stands face to face with reality and sets his face toward Buddha knowledge. He is free from desire and of the perception of I and other, doer and knower, existence and non-existence. Maitreya called this bhumi the proximate stage because the Bodhisattva stands proximate to the attainment of the properties of the Buddha. He has the attainment of an arhat and could enter nirvana, but out of compassion for all beings, chooses not to abandon the world. Many of you have heard the story from Buddhist scriptures about the three men and the wall. One boosts the other up to see what is going on the other side. He goes into bliss and climbs over the wall. The next one is boosted up and he too climbs over, abandoning the third. So the third one says, well, I'm going to find out what's going on the other side of that wall. He climbs up and sees the souls of beings who are liberated. But instead of joining them, he forgoes liberation. He climbs back down to tell everyone else what's on the other side of the wall. At this stage, the Bodhisattva cultivates the perfection of prajna. Prajna, which means wisdom. When you vow to take the prajna boat, it is the wisdom boat. The sutras say that prajna routs the army of Mara, the forces of temptation, as water destroys a vessel of unbaked clay. A bodhisattva who has acquired prajna gives everything away and is flawless in character. He practices meditation, is not moved by temptation, and is motivated by love and mercy. He acquires all the modes of concentration and attainments of a Buddha. Prajna has been called the good friend of the bodhisattvas and the pearl of great price. It is considered to include all the other paramitas and to be greater than them all, as the moon is greater than the stars. Seventh bhumi, duramgama, far-going or far-reaching stage. Commentators are reticent to specifically define what occurs on the Bodhisattva path beyond the sixth stage. As Beatrice Suzuki says, the Bodhisattva is now a very high being indeed, so high that our ordinary relative minds cannot follow him. To understand him now, we must ourselves stand where he is. Sangharakshita says, from this point onwards, all attempts to describe the stages through which he passes must inevitably result in misrepresentation. The Bodhisattva's progress is no longer that of an individual. He is now an impersonal cosmic force. According to scholar H. Wolfgang Schumann, the Bodhisattva changes over into a new mode of being. He becomes a transcendent Bodhisattva, which means that he is no longer tied to a physical body. Suzuki says, in short, the Bodhisattva himself lives on a higher plane of spirituality, far removed from the defilements of worldliness, but he does not withdraw himself to this serene, unmolested subjectivity. He boldly sets out in the world of particulars and senses, and placing himself on the level of ignorant beings, he works like them, he toils like them, and he suffers like them. And he never fails all these times to practice the gospel of loving kindness and to turn over all his merits towards the emancipation and spiritual edification of the masses. That is, he never gets tired of practicing the 10 virtues of perfection. He thus appears in the various planes of mundane existence to liberate sentient beings. He usually appears in all his spiritual glory, but can assume any form necessary in order to reach those he is trying to help. We see an example of this in the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha is asked how the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin travels in the world of suffering and how she preaches the Dharma to living beings. The Buddha then describes how Kuan Yin can appear in 33 different forms to suit the temperament of the one she is trying to save. If there are beings in the land who can be conveyed to deliverance by the body of a Buddha, then to them the Bodhisattva preaches Dharma by displaying the body of a Buddha. To those who can be conveyed to deliverance by the body of the general of the gods, she preaches Dharma by displaying the body of the general of the gods. To those who can be conveyed to deliverance by the body of the wife of an elder, householder, official, or Brahman, she preaches Dharma by displaying the body of a woman. Although at this stage the Bodhisattva practices all the 10 paramitas, at each moment he especially cultivates the perfection of upaya. Upaya, skillful means. This means he devises all possible ways to instruct and liberate souls. One sutra says, Prajna is the mother of the Bodhisattva, and upaya his father. There is no leader of humanity who is not born of them. Buddhists often tell the parable of the burning house to illustrate the perfection of upaya, skillful means. There was an old man who was wealthy. He owned a ramshackle, dilapidated house with but one door. When he was outside the house one day, he saw that it was on fire. He had 5, 10, or 20 children who were playing in the house. He did not know what to do. If he had entered the house and tried to take hold of them in order to save them, the foolish children would have run away from him in all directions. He called to them and cried, "Come, my children, the house is on fire." But they did not heed his words, and they did not even understand what he meant by fire, so ignorant were they. So then he showed his upaya by calling out, "Children, I have put bullock carts, goat carts, deer carts, and other beautiful toys for you outside the door. Come out and take them." When the children heard this, they straightway ran out of the house and were saved from the jaws of death. Instead of carts, the father gave them splendid and costly carriages. Mahayana Buddhists see the father in this parable as the Buddha. The children are ordinary men and women, and the burning house is life in the world. They see the 3 carts as the different paths of Buddhism. The costly carriage is the highest path, the path of the Bodhisattva. 8th Bhumi, Achala, the immovable stage. This stage is considered so important that it is referred to as the stage of perfection, birth, and finality. All the Buddhas appear before the Bodhisattva and encourage him to attain Buddhahood. They initiate him into infinite knowledge and remind him of his great vow, thus persuading him from entering into personal nirvana. Maitreya called this stage the motionless stage, for the Bodhisattva remains in a motionless, unflinching position and can no more be troubled by the differentiation of separate entities and the necessity of using effort in his acts. Sangharakshita says of the Bodhisattva at this stage, he knows in detail the evolution and involution of the universe, the composition of its elements and the nature of its beings. He is now in possession of all the qualities of a Buddha, in consequence of which the possibility of retrogression is permanently precluded. From this stage on, his activities are spontaneous and automatic, born from his supreme compassion and wisdom. His perfection at this stage is pranidhana, or the vow. Now we come to the 9th Bhumi, Sadhumati, good thoughts, good beings stage. At this stage, the Bodhisattva is said to have good thoughts because of all the analytical knowledge he has gained. He knows all the thoughts and desires of men and preaches to them according to the needs of their temperament and through virtually any medium. Maitreya called this stage the stage of perfect wisdom. At this stage, the Bodhisattva cultivates the perfection of bala, strength or power to assist in his task of delivering all beings. He also experiences many samadhis. A samadhi is a state of profound meditation or a mode of concentration. Each samadhi has a definite name and produces specific results. It can be entered into for an almost infinite period of time. Samadhis can be employed by bodhisattvas in all sorts of ways for the liberation of souls. This is illustrated in a sutra about the great bodhisattva Manjushri. As the story goes, Manjushri entered the samadhi of defeating demons and caused 10 billion demon palaces to become dilapidated, old and dark. The demons' bodies likewise became dull, decrepit, weak, and emaciated. The demons became so weak that they had to walk with staffs and were filled with fear. Manjushri then miraculously produced 10 billion devas, who appeared to the demons and explained to them that all that had befallen them was because of the awesome power of Manjushri's samadhi. The demons then greatly feared Manjushri and begged the devas to save them from danger. The devas told the demons, "Do not be afraid. Go quickly to see Shakyamuni Buddha. He is very kind and compassionate. Sentient beings will be eased of their sufferings and will be given peace if they take refuge in him." The demon kings and their subjects were overjoyed and instantaneously went to see the Buddha. They asked him to protect and save them. They said in unison, "We would rather accept the names of hundreds of thousands of millions of billions of Buddhas than hear Bodhisattva Manjushri's name alone." Buddha told them, "Wait a moment. When Manjushri returns, he will rid you of your shame." When Manjushri returned, Buddha told him to withdraw his miraculous powers and to restore the demons to their original appearance. Manjushri asked the demons, "Kind sirs, do you really detest this appearance of yours?" The demons answered, "Yes, great sage." Manjushri said, "Then you should detest desire and detach yourselves from the realms of desire." They said, "After we hear your good teachings, how dare we disobey?" Manjushri then restored the demons to their original magnificent appearance and preached to them the doctrine. 10,000 demon kings generated supreme bodhicitta, and 84,000 demon subjects were freed from defilements. Now we come to the last bhumi, the 10th. Dharma Mega, cloud of the Dharma stage. It has been said that this stage is covered by meditative absorption and mantras like the sky with clouds. It is also called the stage of consecration. At this stage, the Bodhisattva is seen in his glorious body, sitting upon a celestial lotus adorned with jewels. He is surrounded by countless bodhisattvas. Rays of light emit from his body, illumining the universe and healing sentient beings of pain and misery. Rays also come forth from all the Buddhas, consecrating the Bodhisattva as a Buddha. The Bodhisattva practices the perfection of jnana, divine transcendent knowledge. Sangharakshita says, the Bodhisattva, now a supreme Buddha, has reached the endless end of his career. He performs feats of supernormal power and emanates the countless transcendental forms through which, in fulfillment of his great original vow, he will henceforth work for the emancipation of all sentient beings. Some say that at this stage he has not yet become the Buddha, but has reached the highest stage next to the Buddha. He will become the Buddha in the 11th stage, the Tathagata Bhumi, or the stage of a Buddha. As scholar Dwight Goddard sees it, the culmination of the path of the Bodhisattva is the perfect oneness of noble wisdom, where there is no gradation, nor succession, nor effort. The 10th stage is the first is the 8th is the 5th is the 7th. What gradation can there be where perfect imagelessness and oneness prevail? And what is the reality of noble wisdom? It has no bounds or limits. It surpasses all the Buddha lands and pervades the heavenly mansions of the Tushita. It is said that the Buddha once gathered up a handful of shishu leaves and addressed the monks. Which do you think are the more numerous monks, this small handful of leaves or those in the whole grove? Very few in number are the leaves you have taken up. Much more in number are those in the whole grove. Even so, monks, much more in number are those things I have discovered, but not revealed. So this does end my lecture on Buddhism. Thank you.
The preceding lecture was given by Elizabeth Clare Prophet, world-renowned author and spiritual teacher. This is a presentation of the Summit Lighthouse, an international spiritual organization dedicated to universal enlightenment. Founded in 1958, the Summit Lighthouse is a beacon of truth to thousands worldwide and a leader in New Thought spirituality. This program is brought to you by the Summit Lighthouse Network. For more information, call 1-800-245-5445 or visit our website at www.summitlighthouse.org. Outside the USA, call 406-848-9500 or write to the Summit Lighthouse, 63 Summit Way, Gardner, Montana, 59030, USA. For more information about mystical paths of the world's religions, go to www.mysticalpaths.org.